And we're going to visit today with Andrew Thacker. He's the brand new safeties coach for the Golden Eagles, and obviously brand new to Southern Miss and to Hattiesburg. And Andrew, talk a little bit about where you came from, what you were doing, and what your path was that led you to Southern Miss.
Yeah, fairly short path right now, but originally from Georgia, Georgia boy, just outside of Atlanta, Gainesville, Georgia. Played at Furman University after that and enjoyed a good career there. Ended up getting into the coaching profession right after college football. Went to the University of Central Florida, which is a little bit of a bad word around here. They've moved on since, so maybe I can say it. But the last 3 years have been at Oklahoma State, and obviously crossed paths there with Todd Monken. Built a relationship with him, both professionally and then socially. And eventually, when Coach Monken got the job here at Southern Miss, it was a no-brainer to grab real tight to those coattails and come down to Hattiesburg.
Was coaching something that you always wanted to do? Is that, as you were growing up, you think, if I couldn't be an NFL player, maybe one day I'd want to be a football coach?
Very similar to many, many coaches. Stepfather was a high school head coach. So that built a good bit of the passion, and looking up to him, admiring him, and seeing him doing what he loved to do, and then just seeing the effect that he had on people's lives and the effect that he had on my life. So that was a big part of it, having a stepfather that was a high school head coach, and then just loving the game and being a part of it in college. And then it was a little bit of a mistake getting straight into it from college, a little bit of happenstance, but fell into it, and even from this end of it, from the coaching end of it, fell in love with it as well.
How about Oklahoma State? How did you wind up at Oklahoma State and start to develop that relationship with Todd?
Networking profession. Just one coach to know another coach, and not messing up the perception of what you did enough for them to recommend you to go to a place like Oklahoma State. At the time, it was professionally a good step, and a Big 12 school and a BCS school, and just a good move after putting in 2 years as a graduate assistant at UCF. So,
Todd, of course, was the offensive coordinator out there. Did you work under him as an offensive GA, or what was the situation there?
That's the funny thing. I was on the opposite side of the ball, always trying to find ways to compete against him. And a lot of it, again, it being a networking profession, or other guys that Coach Monken has worked with and he respects, and he respects their opinion. A guy like Glenn Spencer, defensive coordinator at Oklahoma State. He's a guy that would put in a good word for me, would stand on the table. He's a guy that Coach Monken would trust his opinion. And then again, even though you're in the hierarchy, you're the graduate assistant, Coach Monken's the type of man that will allow you to develop a relationship. The hierarchy is a little bit transcended with him. He just enjoys people and the social aspect of it, and allows you to be yourself, and allowed me to be myself and get to know him. And again, did just enough to not ruin the perception that maybe I'd be adequate enough to do this.
Todd, talk about him a little bit, the new head coach here at Southern Miss, and you've been around him quite a bit the last few years at Oklahoma State. What do you like about Todd? What's he sort of bring to the table? If you're a Golden Eagle fan, what are you going to see when you get a chance to know Todd Monken?
Todd Monken, loaded question. Two things I think that stand out about him. He's dynamic. That's kind of multi-layered, and then I'd say he's authentic, and I'll get back to that. But he's dynamic personality-wise. He is energetic. He's enthusiastic. He's bouncing off the walls. He enjoys being around people. He's just a legitimate extrovert, and I think the staff feels that. Our players feel that. I think the Golden Eagle community feels that, and he's available to people. He's just dynamic in his personality, just dealing with people in any social situations. If he wants to be, he can be the life of the party. But at the end of the day, he's also intelligent. I think he's incredibly intellectual. I think it carries over to social dynamics. I think he understands people incredibly well. But I think also obviously it carries over to football, the intelligence part. I think he has the pedigree. He has the NFL pedigree, the LSU, the Oklahoma State pedigree. He's done it at the highest level, and I think all of that carries over. So you got somebody that's socially intellectual, and then it carries over to the professional aspect. It's pretty neat, but ultimately, kind of getting back to the original point, I think he's authentic. And I've said this multiple times, but so many times coaches talk about players buying in. if our players buy in, then we have a chance to be successful. But I think the neat thing about Coach Monken is that he's authentic. He's real. He's transparent. I think our guys feel that. So instead of buying in, I think our guys ultimately, and you saw it in the spring, ultimately, believes in Coach Monken, and as a product of that, believes in us as a staff, and I think ultimately is healthy. But he's authentic. He's real. He lets people know who he is. He's not a phony, and I think our players will tell you that more so than anybody. And our players could smell out a phony coach quicker than anybody. So I think that's one of the biggest effects he's had on our team and this community. Is he's dynamic, but at the end of the day, he's real and authentic.
I'll ask you about your safeties in the defense in a minute, but talk about some of your influences in coaching. You mentioned your stepfather back in high school. Who are some guys that have sort of, even though you're young in the business, that have started to mold the way that you look at things as a coach?
I've been very fortunate to work for a string of pretty solid defensive coordinators. I got three guys in particular. Dave Huxtable, he's now the defensive coordinator at NC State. Jeff Collins, defensive coordinator at Mississippi State. And then Glenn Spencer, he's a defensive coordinator at Oklahoma State. And those three guys have kind of, shaped and molded me. You pick up something from everybody you're around. You enjoy relationships with so many people in this business because you spend so much time together. But those are the three that I think I've, learned the most from, retained the most from, and sort of model myself after. And now I'm getting around a guy like Dave Duggan, who I'm in the room with him all day, and seeing what he does well, and I've been incredibly impressed with him. And I think that in a short amount of time, I'll add him to that list.
Do you pick up more? I mean, obviously it's about the X's and O's, but do you pick up more from those type of people about how to coach and how to handle people and things like that? Maybe more so than you do the X's and O's of football?
Without doubt. So much of it is, schematics and X's and O's and being able to fit things up right and teach your players in the right way. But ultimately, it's about how you relate to people. Sort of managing a room, managing different personalities, whether it's with your players, whether it's with a coaching staff, and then just being in a profession where it's incredibly stressful, where it can be tenuous at times, where you can move at any moment, where there's a lot of pressure and stress. And I've learned a lot of that as well from those guys, and just watched them and observed them and looked up to them, and then also, sought out actual advice. So I think you're right there.
Talk about your safeties, who you got coming back, what your thoughts on those guys were coming out of spring practice. Just overall, sort of give us a preview of the safety position.
Yeah, we moved some guys around in the defensive backfield just to sort of fit the measurable skill sets. You got a guy like Jerry and Johnson who's playing a spur position, could always move back to safety. You've got some other guys with some experience. If I have to speak individually about a guy that I'm excited about, that had a good spring, and I don't mind talking positively about him, a guy like Emmanuel Johnson, who hasn't really been a full starter for an entire season, but has in some spots has started and has played a lot of downs over the last 2 years. He's a guy that finishing up the spring, I think that it's a pretty good combination when he was probably the most athletic defensive back in our group and the most coachable and accessible to me. Allowed me to coach him hard, allowed me to get after him pretty good, but he retained things well, and I think athletically he could potentially have the most upside. So a guy like that you're excited about if he continues to come on and put in the work and have the same mental approach, someone like that.
If a guy's going to play for you and ultimately David Duggan or even Todd Monken at that safety position, what type of player do they have to be?
We always talk about a defensive mentality. I think that's almost all-encompassing. Coach Duggan does a pretty good job of explaining that. And if I can kind of go back and take a second to answer this question, for the spring, obviously we installed defenses, we installed schemes, we put in plays that our guys know what to do. But at the end of the spring, our ultimate goal was for those guys to have a defensive mentality, for those guys to be tough, for those guys to be hard, for those guys to play with energy and enthusiasm. We always talk about good body language. Coach Duggan talks about after your teammate makes a play, going and tapping a hat. So we were more concerned about their mental approach, more concerned about, again, them playing with energy and enthusiasm. And Coach Duggan describes it as getting in the black, kind of trying to bring that back and the nasty bunch back. So we want guys to play with a defensive mentality. Obviously, encompassed within that are, guys that know what to do, can be in the right spots, as athletic as we want them to be and to run fast and jump high and tackle hard. We want to get them in the right spots and help them do that and just minimize errors. At the end of the day, if mom and daddy blessed them with a good set of genes, they're going to make plays in space. But we want guys, again, that are tough, that are all in with what we're trying to do defensively and have a defensive mentality.
In August, where's the attention go in regards to the safeties, to the defense, as you guys start to get ready for the season?
Yeah, again, I think our big goal in the spring was sort of establishing that energy, enthusiasm, and body language. So we'll get a little more, obviously scheme specific, and then the closer we get to Texas State, a lot of it will be more scheme and putting people in the right positions in the right spots and more game specific. But at the beginning of that August practice, we'll go right back to just getting them back to that toughness, to that grit, getting them back to running to the football. And another big conscious effort, just with the sophistication of offenses, with their ability, specifically Coach Monken and our offense, of getting guys and getting defensive players in bad situations and putting them in space. It was, you're going to have 11 guys running the football. You're going to have one guy make a mistake and the other 10 overcompensate and overlap for him. So we want to get back to that mentality part. And then, again, as we get closer to that first game to Texas State, we'll get more scheme specific.
What did you know about Southern Miss before you got here? Did you know a lot about Southern Miss? Were you very familiar with it?
Oh, yeah. In my mind, Southern Miss has always had a brand. It's always had a strong perception in my mind. And then going back to being from Georgia, Mom went to University of Georgia, sister went to University of Georgia. I was in Bulldog country, grew up a SEC snob and a Georgia Bulldog fan. Hey, it's just part of the community, it's part of where you're from. But there was always that black and gold team, always down there from Southern Miss, that is always in the periphery of the top 25 or in the top 25. You see them playing Alabama and Auburn and LSU and Ole Miss and Mississippi State, and they're always competitive, and they're wearing that black and gold, and it always had this brand to me. Ended up going to Central Florida, came here, and they came to Central Florida. Got my brains beat in by Southern Miss, so it's got a pretty strong brand, and and then getting in the profession, you're pretty educated on different schools, and you just know about the tradition at Southern Miss. When you think of, I'm sounding like everyone else here, but when you think of Southern Miss, you think football tradition. You think of Hattiesburg as a community that's invested in Southern Miss and specifically its football program. So it's, when you're in this profession, and it's a no-brainer to come to a place like Southern Miss.
What are you looking forward to the most as the season starts to get a little closer?
We're always looking forward to wins and the Saturday experience, but and I think the rest of the staff would say this. We're looking forward to putting a product out on the field that we're proud of, that, again, that same Southern Miss community we were talking about, for them to be proud of. Hopefully that manifests itself in a lot of wins. Obviously, that's the ultimate goal, and conference championships are the ultimate goal, but we want to be proud of the product we put out there. And I think, obviously, as a staff, we'll feel that. We'll feel that from our players. Our players will feel that, and the fans, the people watching, will feel that too. Again, if we're playing with energy, with enthusiasm, if we're exciting, to watch on offense and on defense, if we're running to the football, if we're overlapping, all the things that alluded to earlier, I think whether you're on the sideline as a coach and see them every day, or you're sitting up in the luxury seats, I think you see that and you feel that. So a little bit cliche, a little corny, but I think ultimately we want to, be proud of the product we put on the field, and for people to feel that.
Andrew, it's great having you as a part of the Southern Miss family. Great to have you as one of our football coaches here at Southern Miss. We appreciate you taking some time to visit with us, and best of luck this year.